This is Bill Bice. I am here today with Doug Caddell. Doug, it's good to be with you.
Hi, Bill. Good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you again. One of the things that's really been fun about coming into legal tech. I mean, we've known each other for a long time, which we'll get to that piece. So reconnecting with old friends is a big part of the fun here. So despite knowing you for a long time, I don't really know the story of how you got into legal tech. So what happened? What's the scoop?
If I could figure that out, I'd probably have a PhD, but I started out in, I ended up in Arizona after the Navy, where I was a weather forecaster, and I was ended up after the Navy as an air pollution meteorologist for a copper smelter in the middle of Arizona, middle of nowhere, nearest movie theater, an hour and a half away, which was a big change for me. And I ended up finishing my degree in management information systems at the University of Arizona, which actually had the first MIS department in the country and still one of the top 5, and also did an accounting degree because it was easy to combine the two. So out of school, I went into the CPA business for a couple of years, 2 or 3 years, just to gain some business experience, and then moved over to the technology aspect. And after a number of different job changes and career advancement kind of things, I ended up at the Arizona Attorney General's office as in charge of IT there. And I did that for a couple of years, 2 or 3, and then moved to a private law firm, an 120 attorney firm based in Phoenix, which does no longer exist. And that actually is where I met you. Either was at the AG's office or at the law firm. I can't remember. This was like the early to mid 90s, so my memory doesn't go back that far. And you were with Pro Law, and were the founder of Pro Law, and helped us. You sold me Pro Law, and came over from Albuquerque, which are the balloons in the back. More on that later. And helped us get started on that. And then from there, I ended up doing a little bit of consulting when my wife and I moved to Kansas City. And then I joined Foley & Lardner, where I was CIO for 13 years. And during that time, I commuted a little bit to Milwaukee, then down to Chicago, but still commuting from Kansas City or Houston or wherever I was living for my wife's work. And then subsequently did some consulting, including interim CIO at Relativity, which was founded at Foley & Lardner when I was CIO there. And then I've been at Mayor Brown for just a little over 5 years, but I now live in Colorado and Albuquerque. And for everybody, Bill lives across the mountain from me in Albuquerque. So we're sort of back to the Balloon Fiesta atmosphere there. But so I've been doing Mayor Brown for about 5 years. I've been in legal tech for, too long to count, and I don't want to count that long. And
I don't like counting that long either, but
yeah.
we've both been doing this for a while. So, but that means you've been doing work for anywhere for a lot longer than most illegal.
Yeah, I've worked in Chicago area for 19 out of the last 22 years, but never lived here on Saturdays or Sundays. Mm-hmm. Although I've stayed over a few. So, and we last met each other just 2 weeks ago or so at ILTACon in Las Vegas, and so it was good to see you and others there and see that ILTACon was back. I was reflecting with you just before we started the recording that after leaving the ILTA conference this past year, it was was it worthwhile? And yes, it was, and I look forward to next year as well. I've been going to ILTA for since the mid 1990s, because it was founded. It used to be the Wang VS Legal Users Group, also known as VSlug. I love that title. And it was the Wang Informatics, which was the software division of Wang, was in Phoenix, and right across the street was the Arizona Biltmore Resort. And in summertime, rates were cheap. And so if you wonder why ILTA is in August, because for the first probably 10 or 15 years, it was held in Phoenix in the summertime in August because the room rates were cheap.
And they've continued that theme. It's always somewhere hot.
Yeah.
I assume it's for the same reason.
Yeah.
Well, I really liked how you put it. The ILTA was worthwhile, and it was also kind of like going back in time to earlier versions of ILTA because it was a smaller group.
Yeah, ILTA back in the old days of the mid 90s was at the Arizona Biltmore, and there were about 200-300 members. And the thing I always remember was that the vendor floor was actually in a large outdoor tent outside.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that well. I mean, when we sold ProLaw to West, we announced that at ILTA. That was 20 years ago. It was probably LawNet then.
Yeah, probably so. Went from VSlug to LawNet, and then there was a conflict with a company in the UK as we in ILTA wanted to expand internationally. So that's when ILTA came about.
Yeah, it's become such a crucial part of the legal tech industry now. So that history going to ILTA every year is just a lot of fun. So I'm really hoping we get back to the even though the smaller event was really enjoyable this year, I hope we get to have the full experience next year.
Yeah, that'll be obviously be great. It's sort of interesting though. We think back to Phoenix and how, how the legal tech community used to be regional and much smaller, whether it be regional within the US or now it's more international. I had the opportunity to help start up the UK startup of ILTA, so that was cool too. But I was thinking of how it started, with us in the Phoenix area, and Rick Hellers was in Phoenix, so I met Rick early on. I know in an earlier iPodcast that you mentioned Ray Zwevelhofer, who's CEO of WorldDocs, and I knew Ray at that other Phoenix law firm I referenced, where he was a vendor who helped me start up one of the very first outsourcing of a help desk. And it was actually his cousin, Jeff, who was actually one of the people that outsourced onto the help desk. So it's sort of a small group. And then he moved on to WorldDocs, which is headquartered in Glen Rock, New Jersey, small town outside of New York City. That happens to be my hometown. And I visited him a couple of years ago and went to his building, and his building was just empty lot, empty dirt when I grew up. And he was on the 3rd or 4th floor, and I said, Ray, come over here. And we looked out the window and see that gas station? That's where, when I was a little kid, I used to blow up my bicycle tires. And the barber shop that my mother used to take me to was right over there. So it's just bizarre how things sort of come and go.
Well, it's amazing the connections in this industry, and so many people that get pulled in kind of by happenstance, and then choose to stay because the community is just so great. It's one of the things I've always enjoyed about being in legal tech. So let's talk a little bit about what kind of challenges you're tackling at Mayer Brown. So what are the things that you worry about or top of mind these days?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of it's the same, whether you're in a large firm or a small firm, and had some of these conversations at ILTACon, or whether you're just in one country or another. It's keeping people together. How do you keep people together, especially with a pandemic? How do people collaborate? I mean, we had those challenges before the pandemic. Now it's a little bit in ways more challenging, and other ways maybe a little bit less challenging. We're here on, a Zoom call, and whether you're using Zoom or Teams or WebEx, all of a sudden, in March of 2020, everybody learned how to use technology. Before it was, oh, how can I possibly, do that? I need white glove service. People would go into conference rooms for a video conference, and you'd have to have a tech there and stuff. And so that's going to be something interesting as we do return to office fully, is, attorneys now know how to use a Zoom or a WebEx. So when they come back into a conference room, are they all of a sudden going to forget? And we're structuring our technology and technology staff to assume that they're not going to forget, and that they can, go into a conference room and do a WebEx or Zoom. And another aspect of it is that as we've all gotten used to collaborative tools such as this, where previously we would, if a lawyer needed to have a conference with a client or others, a video conference, that he or she would have to go down to the conference room and do what I just described. Probably half the time now, a lawyer is going to say, forget it, I'm not going to go down a conference room. I'll just do the WebEx or Zoom from my desk. And so that's going to be an interesting a change to see how it evolves. So collaboration, we look at, there's all sorts of aspects out of that. Part of it's, video conferencing and calls, and how this has replaced the telephone. We, at least within the IT department, we have very few conference calls anymore. They're always, Zoom or Teams or something. We're moving more and more to using Teams. We've had an implementation project for that going on for many, many months, but using Teams beyond just the video aspect of it. I'm trying to do the collaboration, including cross collaboration with clients outside of the firm, which, as we all know, a lot of our risk lawyers have concerns about that, but we're trying to evolve beyond those concerns so that we can use Teams, with clients and others to the pretty much the full extent that it was designed to be used. So that's one thing. Another is the obviously the cloud. At my former firm, Foley and Lardner, I brought that firm to a cloud DMS in 2010, a decade ago.
Wow.
Mayor Brown has historically been more conservative, but we're having that talk right now, and I think within the next few weeks we will be on our path to move our DMS to the cloud, along with other things that will then follow, because it's inevitable. As you all know, more and more vendors are going cloud first. At some point in time, whether that's 3, 4, 5 years from now, and for some vendors it's now, it will be cloud only. So if we want to be able to provide our lawyers with appropriate tools for their trade, they're going to be SaaS based or other forms of cloud, because that's where many are already. And a lot of us use cloud already, whether it's, Chrome River for expenses or this app or that app. I always remember from the time consulting, and I would go out to a firm and talk about cloud, and that, oh, we don't use the cloud. Well, yeah, but you're using this, you've got your payroll there, you've got your personnel stuff there, you've got your expenses, you've got other things. And it's like, oh, I guess we do use the cloud.
Yeah, there's a natural regression occurring here, right? It started with really niche applications, Chrome River, Monday, whatever you're using for HR, that's in the cloud for almost every firm now. And then you have firms moving to Office 365. And as you say, they don't even really think about that that's necessarily in the cloud because it's so accepted.
Yeah. And then you get, you get hybrid cloud, like with our Teams implementation. One of the things we moved to hybrid was Exchange, because if you want to schedule meetings in Teams with others, you need to have a piece of that in the cloud. So we're not running Exchange in the cloud, but we've got a hybrid instance.
And then, you know, the DMS is the next really big chunk that goes. And at some point you see the you know, practice management system or the billing and accounting system go to the cloud. And then we'll really have crossed the Rubicon at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably another thing is, you know, just within our IT departments and the firms as a whole, but, you know, getting people to work together, breaking down silos of, you know, this group within IT, you know, they versus this group. A lot of times people talk together, but they don't necessarily communicate. And one thing that I've tried to do, I did this at Foley and I did it here at Mayor Brown, is, you know, one of the things we can do to create that bond within a department and also sell our products and services to our customers, our lawyers and such, is really to brand IT. So we did that at Foley, and at Mayor Brown, we are doing what we call Evolve Mayor Brown Technology. And so that's our brand. And on our emails and such, there will be that little Evolve Mayor Brown Technology logo or brand. So that's one thing we can do as technology leaders, is, you know, find new ways to, or find ways to help foster our selling efforts, because we sell a service.
Yeah, that is such a great way to look at it. I mean, it's natural for me to look at it that way because I'm on the underside, but then for you to do that inside the firm, that really makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and also what I've always talked about is challenge the status quo. Too many times in whatever organization we're in, you know, whether it's law firms or other things, you know, well, why are we doing it that way? Well, that's the way we've always done it. Well, yeah, but that was 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 5 years ago, or in this realm, that was, you know, eons ago, pre-COVID. But challenging the status quo is something that not only as technology leaders we should do, but we should encourage everyone at every level to do that, and including those that come in from maybe from outside legal tech, who have, you know, are new to law firms and the way law firms operate. And sometimes they come from places where maybe it operated better. So challenging the status quo is a constant, not only challenge, but battle.
Well, and I think that's a great way to capture the silver lining of the pandemic, because it has forced a questioning of the status quo. And I think you captured it really well, talking about the exposure that attorneys have now to the technology directly. That's a theme I've been on for a while. And we see it in the changes that firms are making, right? Reducing staff that were doing that support function for attorneys. A lot of attorneys want to do it themselves now.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've talked about is soon after everybody evacuated the offices in March 2020, little side story there, about 2 months before, I was headed to our Hong Kong office in third week in January of 2020, and there was one death in Wuhan. So one death globally, and you think about it now. And then a couple weeks later, the second week of March, I was in London, and that's when we decided to all go work from home. And we moved our firm totally work from home in 10 days. It was actually a benefit. I was in London because the day started early, so my day was long, but it was like, you know, it was appropriately long, so that was good. But soon after that, our managing partner started a workplace of the future task force. And it was probably a month or so after COVID, you know, sort of blossomed. And there were about a dozen or so of us on it globally, myself from the technology aspect. And so we've been thinking about, you know, what's the workplace of the future look like? And not just work from home, but, you know, what's the post-COVID workplace look like? And one of the main things that we talked about there was workflow. And before those conversations started to take place, you know, at the managing partner level, the senior attorney level, nobody was really talking much about workflow. You know, that's something that you and I have, you know, lived in for way too many years. But all of a sudden, I started throwing that in the conversation, and about 3 or 4 meetings in, it started to make some sense to people that as we come back and as we become post-COVID in how we work and collaboration, all the things we've been talking about, workflow is part of it. And whether that's document workflow, because you've got attorneys at home where no longer is it, walk something down to the word processing department or the document services department or copy center or whatever, or have his or her secretary do that, or personal assistant do that. And the same with the type of services that you provide at NQ ZebraWorks. So it's all sort of workflow is it's more top of mind now. And then the other aspect that fits into that whole workflow question is, if you talk to a lawyer, 3 years ago, and you talk to them about where the personal assistant needed to sit, and he or she would say, well, obviously I need my personal assistant right outside my door. When was the last time a personal assistant was right outside some attorney's door? Well, not quite 2 years ago. And so now those PAs are all over the place. We've gone to a remote working workflow process, but it hasn't really been workflow. It's all been helter-skelter. And some of us have outsourced some of those services to, companies that do that. So now instead of the PA being right outside somebody's office, it's in some other company, station in some other state, or the PA is around. And as we come back, we'll be going to a work from home policy of about up to 2 days a week that you can work from home. Some jobs aren't going to fit that, receptionist and copy center and things like that. But that's not just for attorneys, that's for staff as well. So we've proven over the last 18 months that we can work in a distributed environment. That includes secretarial services. And so that will continue on. So this whole idea of how we develop and incorporate good workflow techniques and tools into how we do business from a personal one-on-one standpoint is that, along with collaboration, is probably the 2 key things that coming back will unfold. And
we really can't say that it doesn't work, right? Because we've just all experienced it working.
Yeah. One of the comments that I heard in our Workplace of the Future task force was, we used to have a work from home policy, and it was actually formulated to discourage work from home. Now we have a new work from home policy that's actually made to encourage work from home, because it works.
Right. And the benefits that you get from that are huge. And I think we're going to see a real war for talent, that if you don't have that kind of flexibility, it's going to be tough to get the best talent.
Yeah. Right now, a lot of people are, well, I want to work 100% work from home, and you try to recruit people, and it's like, well, if you're not doing 100%, I don't want it. I think that will probably blend a little bit, whether it takes 6 months, 12 months, that, you have to have flexibility, but it doesn't need to be 100% one way or the other. I know my one of my sons who works in St. Louis for Boeing, he's been work from home since March of 2020 in a 1-bedroom apartment. And he just started going back to the office a little bit and is really happy to do so. And you get others in high rent areas where, maybe a young associate who's in a 1-bedroom apartment, like my son, and getting out and about from time to time is seen as a real benefit. So it'll blend, and it'll blend over time.
Yeah, we're not ending in extremes. The office has been such a crucial part of how firms have operated for so long. I mean, what we've seen, because we've been tracking the data, across a number of large firms, and what you just described is sort of right down the middle of what we're seeing.
Yeah, I've been coming into the office ever since I commute from out west. So pre-COVID, I commuted Monday through Friday, and then now I do a little bit. It's a little bit varied and different, but I like to come in and look at my picture of the balloon on the wall instead of that actually looking out the window and watching the balloons on the sky.
What do you think about the challenges around pushing out new technology and training, given this sort of hybrid work environment?
We have, from the training aspect, we haven't had that much of a challenge. We switched to remote training, and we were like most firms have started to drift away from, everybody come to a classroom kind of thing years ago, and went to more coaching and things of that nature. But we've also done a lot of new hire training, which is for us every 2 weeks we run that, and it's a 2.5 day process, and that's all been done remotely, and we haven't missed a beat. The technology aspect is a little bit somewhat challenging, because as we've tried to do, say, some upgrades like certain types of Windows upgrades or machine upgrades, some of them just have not worked well over the wire because they take so long to churn. And when people were coming into the office, say with a laptop, it just happened. So those have proved to be a bit of a challenge, both from a scheduling and getting it done perspective. One thing that we have gone to with technology, and I know some others have done it as well, is a laptops first policy. If we look back pre-COVID, it was maybe a 50-50 laptop desktop. A lot of attorneys and some others had laptops because they moved around. Secretarial stations and other workstations that didn't need to be mobile had desktop computers. And the one challenge that we found in going work from home when COVID hit was not everybody had a good piece of technology, a good computer to be able to work from home. So a year ago, we started going to a laptops first policy, where everyone gets a laptop unless it's like a receptionist station and things like that, because that enables people to pick up and go. And it also helps facilitate the work from home process. We can't have we can't say we have a work from home policy where you can work up to 2 days from home and then you don't have a computer that you can work from home. So that's one of the big changes that have come about from this, laptops and docking stations.
Yeah, do you see any other after effects coming as, what I have seen in talking to, firms day in, day out is that getting back to the office and being hybrid has actually been more challenging than the initial move to going remote.
Yeah, like I said, we went firm wide globally, and half our, firm is outside the US in a week to 10 days. It was just so easy to pick up and go. But coming back is much more challenging, even if it's a situation where, from a hardware point of view, you find machines that haven't been turned on in 2 years. And then having them churn or download Outlook, all the Outlook to it. And then, there's, to be honest, a lot of people have concerns. And there are those that, we talked about, like my son, who was, really excited to come back into the office a little bit because he's been trapped in this box. And he only moved to St. Louis like a year before, so he didn't have, a good friend community, except at the gym. And then I don't do that. But a lot of people have concerns about coming back in. So it's, like a lot of firms, we continuously see return to office dates being shifted a little bit. And part of that is geography for us. In Asia, like Hong Kong, they've been in the office pretty much the whole time. And a lot of it is culture. A lot of it is they live in small apartments. So like we were talking about. UK and London is mostly like us in the US. They're still trying to get back, although we're coming back there. And it's different. So technologically, is the challenges of collaboration tools, getting more tools in place like Microsoft Teams, where we have a big push. And then also, like we talked about earlier, how our attorney is going to use technology in the office, whether it's video conferencing, or are they going to just say, I want to do it from my desk in my office, or I want to come down to a conference room. And then if they come down to a conference room, we happen to use WebEx primarily now, but whether it's WebEx or Zoom, whatever they've been using at home, all of a sudden that they forget how to push the button. And it's like, no, we've adjusted our staffing priorities so that you really need to learn or keep understanding how to push the button, because it's you can set it up so it's almost that easy to do.
Yeah, I wouldn't wish the pandemic on anyone, but I do think it's moved us forward as an industry and taken things that would have taken 10, or I mean, we're in legal, so it could have been taken 20 years to get there.
Yeah, I mean, you look at from when I first went to DMS Cloud to now, it's been a decade. So it's easy to, think in decades. You think about workflow that we've talked about, that would have been, 5 years out for a lot of firms, maybe 10 years out. If that, because everybody, if you go back 5 or 10 years, everybody had an assistant who ran things around for them. And that's, staffing levels have changed. The world has changed.
Yeah, and I think the acceleration of the digital transformation is really key to this, because once everything is digital, your ability to work in new ways, it opens up possibilities that just didn't exist before.
And it's even like, iPads. I mean, I've been an iPad guy since 2010 when it first came out. And when I first got here to Mayor Brown, it was sort of funny because the new CIO is coming, and so they give the new CIO the latest and greatest laptop computer and all the good stuff. And so it was a really good laptop computer, nice and light and everything. And I tried to use it for 2 weeks, and I gave it back because I said it's too heavy. And because I travel a lot, so I'd be standing on airplane lines, to board. And with this, I could just do that. And then when I'm ready to go, I close it up and slap it in my bag. And the laptop was a clamshell. And so even when I travel internationally, I just travel with an iPad. I can do 90% of what I want to do on it. The other 10% I punt. But just the whole change in technology as we go along. And one thing that's in front of me now is I have a good I'm operating on a desktop computer, because when I trade in the laptop, I said, just give me a desktop, because when I go mobile, I do use my iPad. But I've got a good quality camera up here. I've got a light, halo light up here, so I get some good lighting, because the lighting in my office is actually behind me. So that's one of the things that we're facilitating as well, is when people come back, making sure that they're not dealing with the camera on their laptop, which is down here, or no lighting, so they're in this dark tunnel. So that's another change that you talk about digitalization and how we communicate and how we present ourselves. A whole thing that we've learned, or many of us learned, not all of us, as we've used these kinds of video tools from home, is how to present ourselves. And do you have the cat on your shoulder kind of thing and stuff. And I could be using an alternative screen, but I figured I'd show you my office in the Blooms.
Yeah, and many of us miss the in-person interaction, but I think there's a real benefit to, because now it's not the phone call, as you mentioned, it's a video conference, and you get a deeper connection much more quickly starting with a video conference, as opposed to doing a whole series of calls to then eventually meet in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true too.
And I think one of the things that really causes all of this change to stick is because we've seen one of the most profitable years for law firms ever.
And so you can't make the argument it didn't work or that it doesn't make sense financially. And therefore it's going to stick, and some level of that is going to be demanded from clients, because we were actually very successful doing it just over Zoom, and we do want to see you once in a while, but maybe not as often.
Yeah, I would concur.
So I think this is a great time to be in legal tech, because so much is happening. There's a ton of appreciation for what legal tech has done for the industry.
It's always a great time to be in legal tech. Having gone through a number of different stages of steps like you have, it's never not been a challenge, and it's never not been an opportunity to make progress. And that's what's happened over the course of my career. It's gone from, I can remember when at the Arizona AG's office, we were on a Wang VS system, and then we moved to, like Rick mentioned on another podcast, Bain and Vines, and PCs. I actually bought the first PCs I bought there were Wang branded PCs, and then we moved into using computers and PCs, and I can remember my first law firm, one of the senior partners there, as much as I tried to talk to him, well, actually two of them didn't want a PC. It was a secretary's tool, because secretaries used it for word processing. And one other lawyer didn't want a senior person. And then one day he called me and wanted a PC. And it was because one of his major clients wanted him to connect to their system. And so all of a sudden he had a client need, so he did it. But the other person he couldn't understand why, he was talking with other lawyers who were using it, and this email thing. I mean, all he got out of the email thing was every day he got a thick printout of paper from his secretary, and he couldn't understand it. Well, the secretary printed out every email that was sent to him. And one day he wanted a PC, and it was like amazing. I talked to my boss, Bob wants a PC. So I ran right up there, and because I didn't want to, miss the opportunity. And I had talked to Bob, he wanted a PC. And then so I said, I'll send a tech up with a PC. Tech went up and tech said, where do you want it? Often it's in the back credenza, but no, put it right here on my desk. And well, there's no power and stuff there. I'll have to deal with light. That's fine. Just put it on my desk right here, now. And the next day, Bob called up and said, yeah, take the PC out. And what we found out was he wanted the PC, which he thought was a secretary's tool, so therefore he didn't want one. He wanted the PC on his desk that afternoon because he had a client come in and he wanted to be seen as progressive. Once the client left, it was like, take this thing off my desk. So, we look at how we progress through things, and it's been an interesting and fun time.
Yeah, so we have made progress. That's the good news out of that story. It's hard to imagine an attorney who would not want a computer these days.
Yeah, and no matter what you're trying to do, peer pressure helps.
Yeah, it absolutely does. Well, Doug, this has been a lot of fun. It's been great catching up with you and learning from all your experience and
vice versa. It's been a great ride, like we were just describing. Sometimes a little bit of a roller coaster. I don't think we've either seen any big crashing dips on a roller coaster that we've gone, oh my God, no. But it's been a fun ride, and will continue to be that, and challenging, like we talked about, as we work to come back to the office, because it's going to take some work to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Doug.
All right, bye-bye.